Hey everybody, how's it going? I am here taking some time to, I guess, reflect on the life of Bob Weir and the musical contribution of and passing of one of my heroes. There's a lot to be said about Bob's contribution to me as a musician and to the musical landscape that I inhabit on a daily basis. Why is this so asymmetrical? I don't understand what's going on here. There we go. Anyway, funny thing happened. I was thinking about Bob Weir and his age actually, and thinking how impressed I was with the fact that he was doing so much and was looking so good and was looking so healthy. I mean, I was worried when I hear him sing. It reminded me of when I spoke to my father before he died, and I remembered hearing his diaphragmatic control start to kind of ebb and flow. So he would talk, and then all of a sudden his voice would shoot up in different octaves and things like that, or he would run out of steam vocally. And so when the core of your diaphragm is down here in your deep guts, when that starts to give way, that's usually shows some sort of significant atrophy and slowing down of a typical process of how we support ourselves, right? And I just keep fixating on that last conversation with my own father. And in many ways, I guess Bob Weir is a paternal figure to me, in that he's been with me musically since I was a child. I've always was fascinated with the Grateful Dead's music, starting at age 9 or 8, maybe. Always loved it. It was the soundtrack for a stop animation movie that I made with my friend in 4th grade. So, however old you are in 4th grade, St. Stephen. That was my favorite album, was Skeletons from the Closet. And now, granted, there's a lot of good songs on that thing, and it's like it was a starter kit for me, and it kept going. And never has stopped. So I've always been a Bobby fan, and I definitely am a vocal critic of things that I think he did that were less successful aesthetically, or at least less pleasing to me over the years. I'm allowed to have an opinion of somebody and still hold them in the highest esteem. There's clearly he's unique among modern rock musicians in that he is the undisputed heavyweight champion of live performance. I mean, there's nobody that even comes close. He's been on stage since he was a child. I mean, he's literally dropped acid once, saw the Beatles, fell in love with the Kesey Bus, and within a year or two was in the Grateful Dead, deeply immersed in the San Francisco music scene, and evolved in such a manner that he got to basically join the circus and never come home, and then became somehow a national treasure. Like, the world decided to embrace the Grateful Dead at roughly, I think, when he was about 38, 39, like that's when Touch of Grey happens, and all of a sudden he's successful and married and kind of ties up the loose ends with his adopted past. And granted, he has some real challenges, in terms of finding the next direction after Jerry's passing. But he kept himself very busy, and then really the most shocking element of Bob's career is the fact that he came back for such a massive return for over the last decade or so. I mean, who at age, I think, 66, 67, starts a new venture with the whippersnapper, of John Mayer, and gives us all a second bite at this apple. A lovely thing, and in many ways, like, he didn't need to do that monetarily, but the fact that it took place, what a beautiful thing. Culturally speaking, we all got to reinvigorate our appreciation for his music and his place in the the musical conversation of the 20th century in America is just, he's absolutely spectacular. He was an absolutely spectacular contributor to Western culture. So with sadness in my heart, I wish him the best in whatever's after our understanding of life and consciousness. That's my understanding, that he felt that life continued, like in a way he wouldn't necessarily die. I'm not able to really project what I think about what's happening after we stop having a pulse here, but he is just an incredible guy, an incredible little weird, but in a good way, like in a really good way. I mean, I think that one could argue that his guitar playing echoes pretty much the way in which he approaches his speech patterns and life in general, and like that it definitely seems connected to him being dyslexic. He's got that sort of backwards approach to much of life. So when we look at how he played the instrument, rather than playing a bunch of like open position cowboy chords that are just kind of repetitive and kind of staying here, like I always try to teach students about Bob's approach using Going Down the Road Feeling Bad. And I'll talk to them about, like, rather than sitting there and going like this, going down the road feeling bad, and just holding an E chord and going down the, like, sure, you can start here just doing that. All right, just kind of getting these cowboy chords. Maybe you got that C sharp minor together. But better still would be if you're going. Where you're kind of changing your chord voicings. Taking advantage of the fact that the guitar has its ability to kind of rechange its voicings, much like a piano. You don't have to just stay down here and play like those kind of basic cowboy chord voicings. Okay, so it's not lost on me where I learned how to play rhythm guitar is deeply connected to the Bob Weir approach. All right, I remember in particular hearing that Skull and Roses record and hearing how all of that was handled, and it just was really, really influential. And yeah, but there's some people chiming in. Yeah, I mean, maybe this is just like an opportunity for some sort of a little catharsis or a little group think on how to process losing somebody that's been guiding in a way. I mean, the thing is that the Dead had that nice thing about them that was kind of hands off. They were kind of like, you've got to find your own way, but you can come with us while we find our way, and you could be adjacent to us while we're exploring, and in being neighborly through that process, perhaps we'll find something shared. That's pretty nice. As opposed to the pedantic nature of much of rock music, which is more prescriptive and kind of has an authoritative energy to it. Like, this is how I see the world, and you should either line up with it, or there's just an absolute cryptic nature. Hard to kind of understand what a lot of people think about. But what beautiful music. I mean, I'm not sure how to encapsulate my understanding of Bob, in that, like when I think about where he starts out, he's kind of like, it's hard to say what it appears like without seeming like you're giving a backhanded compliment. But he seems like an overeager younger brother kind of energy that's eager to, like, interested in pleasing and being outwardly energetic and stuff like that. But I mean, the truth is he just probably couldn't contain the excitement of actually getting to do what he really was meant to do. Obviously, I mean, he's really a special cat, and that he's very natural. Like, he never had to do anything he ever really didn't want to do. When you think about it, if you're 16 when you start doing this kind of thing, he's still in high school and basically being not kidnapped. It wasn't against his will, but chaperoned by Jerry Garcia and Phil Lesh, and like, I guess he had some safety in that he came from a relatively affluent background, but that didn't really seem to be I didn't sense him being like thinking like, whatever, there's always a backup plan, my parents are rich. I never really got that vibe about like his thing. I think it was just more like he couldn't not do what he ended up doing. That was all he was interested in, and that was kind of all he was fit for, in a strange way that, in a way, Garcia, though he tried to find ways of kind of getting around modern society and the expectation of holding down a job by joining the army and kind of having, oddly enough, going closer to conformity to find maybe something to sustain you, right? Like, he ends up flunking out of the army, and just like that, like, he's kind of cast adrift and needs to find a way of sustaining his life. And same thing happens for Bob. And there was nothing else that those two were really going to do with their lives that was going to be nearly this influential. It was just spectacular that the two of them found each other. And maybe it's like a Mutt and Jeff kind of thing, where you got the kind of older guiding Garcia and the young exuberance of, Bobby. And oddly enough, the funny thing is that you'd think the more experienced of the two would be the one that wrote more complex material, but you'd be wrong. Bob's music is significantly more ornate, and Bob Weir is an accomplished rhythm guitar player in a way that Jerry Garcia was never capable of doing. He did not play like the things that Bob could do, and did not sing whilst doing it either. It's funny, I teach a bunch of deadheads in my little school thing, and one of the things we always are talking about is how Bob Weir is actually the guy that's doing all the heavy lifting while Garcia is singing your favorite songs. Like, Garcia is sitting there going like this, just kind of holding down one chord and keeping a low beat, and meanwhile Bob will be doing the it's just beautiful, really sensitive music, and at the same time, he's still like on really aggressive, like lots of energy with that right hand. And when I play like this, I don't have the benefit of being able to really smash the guitar. I don't really thrive under those kinds of conditions anyway when I play rhythm, but he sure did. I was trying to process last night by learning Weather Report Suite. Wow. Yeah, that's a hell of a song. That's a ton. But man, what a beautiful dude, And so I think this is just a really beautiful life to have witnessed. And I mean, very funny to kind of see the double entendre of the title of the film that back a couple of years ago called The Other One, right? It's like he wrote so few songs that, like, is it that song, or no, it's the other one, it's the other song that he wrote, like that kind of thing. And being called the Kid, and here he is, constantly in the shadow of this charismatic kind of reluctant leader within the Grateful Dead, and he ends up being like the heartthrob of the band. He ends up being the stadium mouthpiece of the band in terms of being in the center of the stage and jumping around and being the source of like the more, I guess you could say, typical source of outward manifestation of excitement and energy in the band. He's certainly the sexiest and prettiest of all the guys in the band, and he is just spectacularly suited for his position in there, because none of those other guys could or would have done what he was doing. And having been at those shows, if it was just Jerry standing there by himself, I'm not so sure we would have had as much fun without the, now, and when you look back on it, it's like you can't help but wonder, was that all necessary? And sometimes you hear him going off and you're like, what's Bobby doing? And at the same time, man, when you were there, it didn't matter at all that it seemed a little, sorry, it didn't matter when you were there. He was thinking about it in the moment, I think. And it was just really, really super fun. I mean, I don't think I've ever had that much fun with my clothes on. That's really, really a good time. A really good time. Now, granted, like I said in the past, or I said earlier, I think he would be. It's not like just because he died, you can't talk ill of things that you disagree with or choices that he made aesthetically with his guitar tone or whatever. And the reality is that, I think that maybe hearing loss affected his choices as he got a little older, or maybe it's trying to find a sliver of real estate in the sonic landscape to call his own. So he chose the space where caterwauling and grinding of metal met in the treble frequencies. It's unfortunate in my opinion, because he started out exactly, oh God, there's no sound I like more than the sound of his guitar on Europe 72. When you hear that little, that sound, I think my heater just keeps going on, driving this guitar crazy. Somehow it was 48 degrees 2 days ago, and now it's 23 degrees here in New York. And being in the subterranean dungeon I call my studio, lovely as it is, thank you to my lovely wife for providing me with such comforts. Right? Yeah, see, we've got a tuning issue there. That's just sharp. Okay. Yeah. Pardon me while I get this together, folks. Anyway, that sound of that 335 and believe it or not, even the 345. Right? I don't know if everybody's familiar with the distinctions between them. But the 345 is basically just like this guitar with some fancier inlays, gold hardware, and this one little knob that you'll see. It's like right here usually. And it's called a varitone. And it rolls off varying degrees of bass frequencies. So you could be on the neck pickup, but you see how that can get a little thick. So maybe you brighten it up a little bit. I find that to be a little shrill though. Sound of that neck pickup 335, or if you want a little bit more clarity, come right in here. Right, but he would have that the 345 often. So he's got the two guitars. One is red that's the 345. That's going to be the one that you see on the Europe 72 tour. And then he has the Sunburst 335, I think is a 59. And that's the Sunburst one that you see him playing in the Grateful Dead movie, and that's a hell of an instrument too. Again, they had PAF style pickups, so that's kind of a low output, high clarity, like a lot of clarity to the pickup, even though it's a humbucker. So you end up with this kind of sweet, chimey sound without the same kind of high-end issues that are going to come from pure single coils, like the Ibanez with its extra single coil and the splits and all that stuff. And while there is something nice to that mid-70s kind of that kind of super bright, thinner sound that he finds it come 77. By the time we get into the 80s and then definitely into the middle 80s, mid to the late 80s with the Casio and the guitars with the Floyd Roses on them, all of a sudden the relationship between him and the band is completely different than what it was in, say, 1970 to 1977. Like that little section of time, man, is just so gorgeous for him in terms of his tonal choices. So I really do love how he approached the interaction, the kind of watch gears is the term that I always use. It's like, here's the Garcia ideas and how he would like kind of inhabit there. So we could end up with something as simple as Garcia going, let's see if I can, I'll just do it. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can end up with him finding the pockets in there. Just pretty clever. I mean, it's really clever, and I don't think most musicians aren't good at seeing the shadow cast on the wall from their bandmates. They're good at recognizing the shape that their bandmate inhabits, but what they're not good at is seeing the kind of negative space that's left, that's available for them as a bandmate to inhabit. So what ends up happening is most of the time the second guitar player, it compounds what the work of the lead guitar player that's already there, rather than fleshes out the absent spaces and zigs where the other guy is zagging. And that is Bob Weir's hidden talent. It's just it's unspoken how it doesn't get nearly the attention it deserves. It's fucking glorious how smart he is. Oh, sorry, an extended tuning session is very appropriate for any Grateful Dead tribute discussion. You aren't fucking kidding, bro. They could have invested in a couple of backup guitars and a tech that would tune them and hand them this stuff, but they were more like old school folkies that, they just like, I'm on the stage, this is my guitar for the show, I'm gonna make this work, That's kind of an interesting thing. I was trying to process last night by learning Weather Report's weed. I already talked about that. He was the kid with the best weed. Yeah, I mean that was true. He was the guy that I guess Weir would have the kind bud. Wonderful demonstration of Weir's approach is integral to the sound. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that I'm really curious about. How Bob came to write Weather Report Suite without having formal and classical musical composition and training. Prelude is every bit as ornate as well, I'd be careful about comparing it to Bach. Maybe in terms of its chordal structure, it's lovely. But one of the things you have to really understand is that Bach was an absolute monster motherfucker who whipped out the stuff that you're seeing and played everything. He's a he was straight up genius virtuoso in a way that Bob Weir is not going to. He cannot, technically speaking. Bach had chops, like monster chops, apparently. In addition to that, he wrote songs that were the same backwards and forwards and upside down on the staff. And I mean, to some degree, I suppose that might just be more of a geometric anomaly that he just wanted to see if he could do. But I mean, Bach is one of the true masterminds of the instrument, in that he's the reason why we even have one of the reasons why we have tempered tuning, the well-tempered clavier being the songs that were written for the instrument before we had tempered tuning. And so grappling with the fact of that the string sounds different when tuned. Thirds are never totally accurate, right? You ever find that, like when you form a G chord and you go, and that open B string sounds really nice, and then you fret the D against the open D string, it might sound nice. But the second you go and try to play the A chord, its third creates some beating. So you end up having to flatten the B string a little bit, and just finding the sweet spot where it's just bullshit enough out of tune with both of them that it sounds kind of nice. That's the thing that, you know, on the keyboard where you can't bend strings or tune. Once it's done, you're kind of trapped. Anyway, Bach also understood a counterpoint in a way that we can't even begin to see in Bob's work. That said, Bob Weir is a cultural phenomenon that just, you know, extended for longer than I think J.S. Bach was composing and stuff like that. And like I said, he doesn't need to be compared to anybody to shine. But to compare his musical gifts with that of another, you know, luminary might be I think it's an easy position to argue from a historical perspective for me, because I'm ethnomusicology and English major, so I'm a long-winded pedantic jerk. That said, I'm on your side. I fucking love the guy. But let's just talk about what are the conventions of Bob's understanding of music. Okay, he refuses to be where you are, and that is something that we should all try to embrace. When we hear songs, we want to hear, I mean, with the exception of harmonizing lines, like the opening lick in you know, when you hear that you know, when you hear that that opening in Cassidy, and then you hear that kind of thing. That's really nice. Okay, so that's obviously some sophisticated harmony and understanding that stuff. But generally speaking, he does that. He does the gears of the watch kind of interleaving with Garcia in particular. The problem I had with the band was that post Keith, there became kind of a spatial jump ball. All right, Garcia doesn't change, but between Bob Weir's role ends up kind of drastically being recast, because Brent Midland comes in with a different instrument. He comes in with a big muscular B3 sound. And this gobbles up most of the bandwidth that Bob used to inhabit with that low, creamy, right? So when you think about what's happening in, for example, let's talk about how that He's Gone lick works, okay? Let's just assume that Garcia played a 335, which he didn't, but, right, kind of twangy, right, back pickup I'm using. He would have been using the middle pickup on the Strat, but still would have had some upper mid-range clarity, right? Okay, so if you've got that happening, for Bob to go and play, well, come on, where are you? Okay, okay? Like to find the pocket where he isn't both tonally, right? When Jerry goes bright, he goes dark and creamy. When Jerry goes low, you know, and does things that are like, where's Bob? He's up here. Right? He's always doing something contrary to, all right? And what does this do? It effectively ends up orchestrating the guitar section, all right? Now, granted, most of the time that's his doing. That's his teaching. I think he taught himself that, right? But maybe, just maybe, it stems from, you know, lessons learned from his guitar teacher, who turns into his future bandmate, right? Let's look at what Garcia actually pens, the one line that I think shows this perfectly. So it makes sense that this would be kind of an understood aesthetic choice within the band, is to not step on somebody else's part. All right, and let's look at the China Cat lick. Okay, so if we've got the Garcia part doing this, right? Okay, seeing Bob find a the fact is that those two lines intermesh completely. They interlock in a glorious, cool way. Right? Now, granted, Garcia wrote both parts, but that said, Garcia didn't play it like Bob does. All right, it still didn't sound like the version of Oxymoxa or whatever, however you pronounce that fucker. It doesn't sound like that at all. It's a different vibe altogether. By Europe '72, that song has reached, I think, its wedding day, right? It's the picture that you would keep looking back on and say, oh my God, this is it in its most idealized form. And both the band and Bob Weir are in top shape on that night, May 3rd, 1972, in Paris. That becomes this kind of awesome performance. I think it's definitely worthwhile to note that that's where all those things kind of come together, but including the whole, like, that whole, what do you call it, that little, all that stuff. I mean, think about all that cool shit, man. That's so cool that Bob was able to have a couple of breaks that I remember growing up and thinking, man, Jerry Garcia's doing some cool R&B shit in there. I had no idea what the division of labor was in the band. I didn't realize that Garcia is basically doing nothing until he's doing the most of the fiery solos. But rhythm-wise, not really a heavy contributor here. What do I see here? I'm really curious about how Bob came with the Weather Report suite without having, okay, so that's cool. Excellently said on every level. I share my exact situation of having significant criticism of Bobby's aesthetic, but also holding him in absolute highest esteem, 100% pure legend, period. I agree, obviously, yes. So I think we're aligned there. Same, definitely classical composer vibes. I was listening to Dick's Picks 24, and you can tell that Phil loves the prelude. Yeah, I mean, both Phil and Bob loved, they're both gone. It's so hard to actually kind of talk about them in the past tense because the music is still here, so like that's all I've ever really known from them. So in a way, they're going to live forever to me, or until I die. Have you ever heard the demo of Weir playing the Weather Report suite solo on an acoustic guitar before? Yes, I have, yeah. It's beautiful. There's some lovely music, and I've never tackled it. I've never really, I honestly don't really align myself with this super complex Bob Weir stuff and the super complex Phil Lesh stuff. I tend to actually be more fascinated by less of the human hand on the work, and I tend to think about it more like, I think Garcia finds songs in the ether that feel like they've already been written for 100 years, and that's, to me, the simplicity of his recipes kind of speak to my more basic approach. I tend to prefer big, simple bold flavors in food and in life. I prefer just a keep it simple kind of approach. I'm a little bit more of a stripped back personality in general. Like I'm not real. I do like to talk with flowery stuff, but musically speaking, I see the purity and the genius in the simplicity of it. Having only a few basic ingredients and parts, just because it's simple doesn't mean it's easy to actually distill something down into like a fucking crystal. Like that's really something special, actually. So bringing things to their absolute essential elements, remove any one piece and the whole thing crumbles. To me, that's kind of more impressive from a compositional perspective than writing very interlocking and not overwrought, but definitely like considered approach. I think the two are wonderful foils towards one another within the dynamic of the band. The fact that a song like Unbroken Chain could exist next to a song like Ripple is fascinating to me, because find me another song in 813 or whatever the fuck is going on in the middle section of Unbroken Chain, or even the intro of Unbroken Chain is indecipherable to somebody who lives in common time. And then at the same time, you have a song like Ripple or Friend of the Devil that feels like those songs could have been written around a campfire in the late 1800s. Those songs seem like they're just part of the American consciousness in a way that, it's kind of like Yankee Doodle or something like that. Very, very interesting that both those fruits grow on the same tree. So I've always been more drawn to the crystalline nature of Garcia's work rather than the more ornate side of composition that is exhibited by his other two partners in crime there. So that's just my thing there. Okay, so yeah. So let's talk a little. Can I talk a little bit about Weir's later use of controlled feedback, West LA fadeaway? Yeah. So he's got so here's somebody who has a. It's my look. Like I've said, my fascination with Bob Weir's work ends at around Shakedown Street. To be honest, I happen to think that Shakedown Street, including the album itself, has some of Bob Weir's most compelling work. Actually, he's dynamite. Actually, he's pretty awesome on Go to Heaven as well. Some really, Lost Sailor and Saint are really pretty amazing compositionally speaking, and I do like the song Feel Like a Stranger, though I don't really care for its initial presentation on the album. I think it's poorly produced, but quickly remedied in the two live versions that we have, but on their official releases of, I grew up with much less material than all the heads now. Like younger kids they've got just oodles and oodles and oodles of great sounding material to listen to. But I remember in 1983, you were lucky. I was lucky to have my little Dead Set cassette tape, and I could listen to Feel Like a Stranger off of that because it was so much better than the version that was on Go to Heaven, which has this kind of boom, 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 this kind of fuzz bass thing, and it's not really that well rendered. That said, the Sailor Saint off of Go to Heaven is lovely. So that's good, as is the Althea. Even though Don't Ease is kind of candy ass in terms of its sweetness, it's still got some fantastic fucking guitar playing on it. It's just dynamite guitar solo on that. And Alabama Getaway is a rip-snorting, kick-ass song that's wonderfully played by Garcia there, and, by the way, by Bob. So let's talk a little bit about what somebody mentioned about this kind of infinite guitar sound that happens with the advent of the digital processing and compression. So, like I mentioned, Bob's place in the band became kind of an odd. He stopped being the central character that Garcia is playing off of, and became more of a garnish. Actually, he's not holding down the fort in the same way that he used to. It used to be that the frosting on the cake was Keith doing nice comping and arpeggios, a very tasteful accompanist in Keith, but not really that fiery a soloist. And so they kind of flip things around with a much more muscular approach, and the choice of instrument being predominantly grand piano with Keith all of a sudden shifts to predominantly B3, or that dreadful Doogie Howser like phony Rhodes sound. That's not really such a pleasing sound. You can tell I don't like that very much. But that aside, it's a lot more interaction between Garcia and the keyboards, kind of like what he has over in JGB, leaving Bobby kind of on his own, and he can't really access the full spectrum of sound that was once available to him. So he ends up narrowing his tone and actually opting for a distortion a lot of time. And what I think is kind of lost on a lot of people is they don't understand what distortion is from like a sound. If we look at like a smooth sound, like a clean sound, it's a sine wave, right? It doesn't have any hard angles. But if we were to lop off the tops of a sine wave, it would go up gently and then be flat. And right at that moment where the curve breaks to that flat line, that crunch that happens there, that clipping, is effectively like a brick wall limiter that kind of stops the sound from getting any louder. That's what, I mean, it's not going up anymore. It gets lopped off, and there's some distortion that occurs whenever we have that sharp of a change in a transient. The transient's moving up, and then all of a sudden it just immediately stops. There's going to be some sort of sonic, like, kind of glitch, right? So that's what overdrive is that being that the softer that curve is, we call that soft clipping, right? And that's a pleasing sound to many, right? Or it's become associated with it, right? So as that gets more and more of like a sawtooth, like kind of a straight up and down, well, square wave, like a flat line representing silence, then a straight up meaning presence of sound, then a flat line at the top of the wave representing like a very buzzy kind of sound. This kind of, that's fuzz, okay? That's like that square wave fuzz. And as we round off the corner of that big square that comes up, it becomes more and more pleasing and smoother sounding, kind of like a well overdriven but still distorted sound, right? And that's where all that harshness, but that's compression as well. In a nutshell, clean compression does that, all right, without causing any of the wacky artifacts that we call distortion. And sometimes those sound great, and sometimes that sounds kind of harsh and yucky. Bob doesn't have, he doesn't have like an amp that overdrives or distorts in a typical like kind of Hendrix, Jimmy Page, like kind of Eric Johnson or Eric Clapton or that kind of guitar sound, right? It's definitely more of a processed sound. And in addition to the actual compression of the distortion that he's applying, there's also like a narrowing of the trebles and the bass. So it becomes like this inhabiting just in the mid-range. So it creates a kind of a bit of a sustained sound right in this one little spot. And then you couple that with the use of active pickups like EMG pickups or Bartolini pickups in some of the instruments that I think are being used. And then the application of distortion after that, which distortion, again, takes that already compressed sound. I mean, he already starts squishing the sound. That's what creates that kind of I have some presets that are already dialed in with some compression on here. Let's see if I can find one of them just to show you what I'm talking about. All right, I tend to, like I said, gravitate to the sweeter sound of the, let's see. Here we go, I think this is, yeah, so if you hear this kind of, how it kind of goes and pushes down a little bit. So a square wave sounds like this, kind of harsh. Kind of that has that. Now granted, that's already been EQ'd and stuff like that for me, and I like that sound. It's kind of a buzzy sound. He didn't do that. He was in that, like I said, he compresses the trebles and the bass, and then compresses both the dynamic range of the instrument. So any sustain at all is effectively as loud as the initial attack. So you have compression and distortion and this kind of narrowing of the frequency spectrum. That plus high volumes and a guitar with active pickups creates an amazing amount of sustain. But sustain is not always such a great thing. If your guitar doesn't have like a certain envelope to it that kind of gradually disappears, then it's very easy for you to be everywhere for too much. So consequently, Healy starts lowering them in the mix, and so all of a sudden, just the whole thing starts to, the whole recipe kind of comes into, has a bit of turmoil in my opinion. That said, there are some times where he does those kinds of little moves where he would go like, and the sustain carries through, and then he'll hit like a tremolo bar. And what does a tremolo bar do if not relax the tension of the string and then reinvigorate it when you go wow, 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 wow? You could do that infinitely. So without another pick stroke, all right, you got two drummers in the band. That's a lot of transients taking place behind them. All right, so those moments where you're hearing, or right, that weird hammer-on thing that he likes to do between the two octaves. All right, really pretty, but then in addition to that, he'll sometimes have some of that weird overdrive blended in there, sometimes a little like some sort of invert. I don't think I'm plugged into my envelope filter, but sort of he likes to do that upside down filter sound where you hear the sound go ow instead of whack, kind of like this. So you'll hear, let's get this going up. That kind of sound we're hearing. All right, and if we change the frequencies from being interested in the bass to where he would do, you get that kind of, right? So you end up with that cool kind of thin shakedown street sound. All right, but that's a little gooey sound. He ended up using different effects than Jerry. But that mutron in the upside down position can be pretty helpful on that kind of what is that sound with that? Right. All right, you end up with that inverted wah-wah sound sometimes. But the distortion side of things never really didn't really appeal to me. The pink Strat with the Floyd Rose, the Black Knife, and the Casio guitars. Those guitars didn't really sound so great to me. And to be honest, you know, I was happy to be able to go to the Grateful Dead concerts, but my preference has always been for the stuff that took place starting in 70 and ended up in around 77 or 78. Okay, what do we got here? Can I talk about his soloing? Yeah, let's talk about that because that's pretty sweet. Okay, can I explain the use of controlled feedback? So West LA Fadeaway is that sound, right? The controlled feedback is coming from an abundance of compression, overdrive, and physically lopping off the highs and the lows, getting in front of a speaker, and compression and feedback work really well together because the compressor is looking for any signal, and even if it's low, it grabs it and makes it loud. And then the pickup hears that happening and it starts to feed itself. Now you can, judging by the lavalier mic here and the headphones, I'm running with no speaker at the moment. Right, if I do that, then the speaker overpowers the microphone, and I've gotten complaints that the voice doesn't sound direct enough. So I've tried to adapt how I'm vain. I don't like wearing big goofy ass headphones, but it's the only way I've managed to figure out how to make it sound right. So this is the closest I can get to a good sound, but feedback is difficult without the actual speaker component. Now, there are devices like a Sustainiac pickup that effectively creates a magnetic field that agitates the string, just like an EBow would. I'm not sure if you're familiar with an EBow. It's a little plastic device that's kind of shaped like a C, and you kind of hold it and has two grooves in it that kind of nestle the two adjacent strings to the one that you're attempting to manipulate, and it kind of creates a magnetic field that goes and makes the guitar come alive because it's metal moving metal and stimulates the string. You get infinite sustain, and if you vary the proximity to the string, it goes and it makes it. You can create very bow-like effects with the proximity of the effect. That's not what he's doing, but that's just me being a nerd and talking about stuff. All right, so if you're interested, you're going to need some volume to do it. You're going to need, I would recommend a guitar with a Floyd Rose so you can use the whammy without worrying about going out of tune. And active pickups, like hot pickups, are helpful, and the ability to compress and then add overdrive to the compressed signal, or flip-flop the order depending on which way you think is better. I'm not sure what he did because I've never really liked it that much. There's sometimes where it does sound cool and like, oh wow, that's but to me, most of the time, that's not the recipe of the Grateful Dead's music that I love the most. I like the way the band sounds in 72, probably the most, 73 and 4 after that. Then the return of the double drummers starts to happen, and that's where I have problems with the bottom half of the band's representation. And so for me, the sweet spot is that little pocket where this is me being a dick. All right, I mean, but everybody always asks me what's my favorite sound of the band. One drummer, no Donna. And that's nothing against Mickey, and there's nothing against Donna, but that's my sweet spot. I like that sound. I like it where Phil is still singing, and they have both Keith and Pig on keyboards too. That sounds nice, like having the extra percussion. Sometimes Pig would do that with the güiro or the tambourine or some congas or some shit like that. That's pretty slick. And then he had the B3, and then Keith had the piano, and so you end up with some nice things, like the recording of He's Gone off of Europe 72 has the really strategically placed B3 part, like a steam locomotive rolling down the track. He's gone, nothing's gonna bring him back. Ding, he's gone, and then it's out. Just one chord. Pretty clever use of that texture. All right, let's see what these other questions are. And I'm trying to answer these as best as I can, though the truth is there's a lot of people that have probably spent more time trying to study Bob's stuff. Can I talk about the soloing? Yeah, we'll do a little looky-loo at my understanding and approach to the China Cat stuff. It also blew my mind so somebody else shares the same thing, that it was interesting to figure out that it's Bob doing all the heavy lifting in China Cat, which I always loved. Sage in Spirit is pretty interesting. Yes, it is. Garcia certainly gets compositionally ambitious with Help Slip. That's true, but it's kind of a white elephant. There's not a lot of those tunes, right? You'll notice that the tunes that he abandons, like Cream Puff War, doing that rag, all the kind of busy shit off the first couple of records, very quickly gives way to a more streamlined approach like Wharf Rat, or it's not often that there's like really heady stuff. It's mostly clever anomalies between one or two chords, or a kind of a very folky presentation. That's my opinion, but I think it's an easy position to argue, actually, if somebody disagrees with me. I am behind on the stream. You cover China. Yeah, there's no big deal. We'll talk about it here, though, in a minute. Okay, Matthew chiming in here quite a bit. I'm behind, but I do agree that you saying you connect more with less with the composed, complex stuff. Yes, it's true. I tend to like the more natural writing and stuff like that. But let's talk a little bit about the Bob parts in I Know You Rider. Okay, so let's get to a sound that's kind of comparable. So we could do that. Okay. So I'll do I'll try to set up a little groove here. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. All right, that's basically just a D chord suspending, and then we're back to a little C sound, and then C, that's a G kind of with a D in the bass, and that's a C. All right, I'm gonna grab a bass and see if I can get a little low end in this loop. Sometimes the Kemper doesn't want to comply, but I'll see if I can make it happen. Take this thing off. Okay, pardon the pop. All right, here we go. All right, so let's see about this. I got a little bit. I really would like my looper to work. Yeah, that's the thing about the Kemper is like its memory doesn't, it's like my memory is clocked out. It's like filled up. It shouldn't do that to me, but it did do that to me. Let's see if I can sometimes I can scare it into doing what I want it to do. There it is, good. Okay. Now, we'll see whether or not I can get it to actually take off. 1, 2. Okay. Crappy bass, but whatever, we'll just make it work. So if you're interested in getting this Bob thing together, there's a couple of lines that I think are kind of like typical for Bob in this era. That kind of move, okay? And this is just like a little trill that he'd like to do. So that's... All right, and that's this. Down, hammer, pull off, up. Down, hammer, pull off, up. Okay, so last note is this pinky on the 12th fret A string. All right, and every now and again, you'll do that kind of thing, and then you'll go and come up into the major sound. Okay, so basically, it's kind of like he's using that blue third, right? That a little bit to get into there. Okay, so. This one as well. All right, this pinky with the octave below it. All right, we're gonna go, or if you can stretch with your middle finger, it makes it easier because your ring finger can just kind of park over the C note right there at the 10th fret, the D string. All right, and then you can come down. Sorry, not that chromatic flat sharp, that flat 6 or sharp 5. So. That kind of thing. So you're going to get that. Okay, so what are we seeing here? We're seeing again this more the F rather than the F sharp being bent to. Now, I don't know if that's because Bob used flat wound strings and those are harder to bend, or he just doesn't have, you know, kind of hand strength. Maybe he didn't understand how like bending takes place from the wrist rather than from the fingers. So his bends are usually a little wonky, but it still sounds really kind of hip. Okay, so it's kind of a sharp 9 kind of sound over top of the D's. Kind of that, right? That's very common in American music, is over a dominant 7 sound, which is what this is. Right, over top of that dominant 7th groove, we can hear that flat 3. Okay, so that's where we're going to start with those. Maybe the biggest signature lick of that whole thing is that little slide from here. All right, I'm plucking and picking at the same time, but you can also use the whole strum. So there's going to be a down slide, right? All right, and you'll see I get the second one on an upstroke. Down. All these great licks, okay? So this here, this idea where we're sliding the D string from the 9th fret into the 10th fret, basically all we're doing is taking the 6th degree of the scale and bringing it up to the flat 7. And at the same time, we're harmonizing the end game that we're looking for from the flat 5th. Okay, so you could envision that as being the D in the bass and hearing, and that's what is happening in this lick right here. It's just because the strings change tuning ratios. Right now we have less space. We don't have to stretch back like that to get to the root with that. See how far we have to spread this? Not only are the frets bigger, but the tuning of the guitar is such that now we have to accommodate this in a much different way than we do up here. We only have a 1 fret jump. Right, we're doing that rather than, you know, that's a much bigger jump to have to do. All right, so consequently, we don't do that. We just kind of go. So you do need some good muting on that G string and the strings adjacent to there. Okay, and this is kind of a pivoting idea. We're going. That's between, that's a major second, so between the D and the C note. And the cool thing is you can just leave the pinky anchored there on that A note. I've already discussed this kind of phony Keith Richards pinky position with the A chord shape as my preference. Bob likes to actually put the 3rd in there. I find it to be just too cumbersome and kind of rich. I prefer the 3rd to be at the top of the voicing. It sounds lovely. So over top of that, we would be hearing. basically doing like a pretty aggressive funk rhythm over top of that static D7 sound. All right, that's a massive, massive undertaking to figure out all that shit though. All right, so do I have a website for lessons and stuff? Or just YouTube? I do use Skool. Skool, somebody's asking. So I teach private, well, not private. They're kind of like small classrooms, you know. All day Wednesday, I teach from 12 to 6. And then there's 2 pre-recorded lessons. There's one on Monday and one on Tuesday. They kind of expand the definition of what we're learning that week. You know, we do a lick of the week, then the song of the week. There's probably close to about 10 hours of recorded content every week. And as a member of the school, you end up getting access to all kinds of bonus material. It's kind of this, you know, kind of a Patreon-y thingy, I guess. There's about 80 people there. Class size ranges usually from 2 to 3 to maybe as many as 8 or 9 people. There's 80 members at this point, and it's less than it was to take private lessons from me. So that was the way Matt's asking here. So the free stuff is going to always be here on YouTube for you. And if you want to actually have like live, I mean, the cool thing about the school thing is that everybody's on like a conference call. So, you know, if I'm there for 6 hours, you know, people are coming and going in and out for a little bit. They ask questions, and then there's a review session on Thursday, which is basically like a second bite at the apple. If you can't make the Wednesday class, I'm there then for 2 hours. Fridays is an off day, and then every week we start a new song. So this week we actually did. I was gonna do Jack Straw anyway, and then all of a sudden Bobby croaked. So we ended up doing the. Stuff, figuring out how to do all the Bob stuff. So okay, I'm behind the stream. I cover China. I agree. They connect more with the less composed, complex stuff. Okay, always loved me and my uncle and Big River. Yeah, those are great tunes. Those are great songs. Those are kind of, I think, the way that Bob finds a way to kind of sound connected to the folkier, more organic compositions that are inside of Garcia's self-penned repertoire. That's what's interesting. Like a song like Black Peter, that sounds very old school, you know? So here's him doing El Paso and all those cowboy tunes. I happen to love that shit. Also, not only because I think Bob does a great job, but also it affords Garcia the opportunity to be the accompanist. And boy, oh boy, does he do a spectacular job playing second guitar behind Bob Weir, who has no problem doing ornate rhythms. So now you get this lovely Garcia lead accompaniment often, this lovely interpretive call and response that happens like in El Paso or Mama Tried and those kinds of songs. All right, that's awesome. Is that the link in my bio? Oh, the school is 100% legit, absolutely incredible. I don't know who West Coast Tomato is, but I fucking love you for plugging the school. That's cool. Matthew is asking about, so the link is not in my bio. You know, the truth is, if people want to know about it, it's out there. You can just look up Snax Skool, SNAXSKOOL. There's also the occasional like bit of spammy, you know, advertisement around the holidays or something like that. Like, you know, there are other providers for this type of stuff, but if you want to learn from, hey, it's New York, you try the rest, you try the best. No, you know, it's kind of the pizza box mantra there. But the truth of the matter is, one thing I do have going for me is I'm old and I've been around the block. I have a lot of experience. So I'm happy to share a lot of anecdotal and maybe have a little bit more wisdom than some of the other cats that are out there teaching the same shit. Everybody's got their own little niche. All right, so gone but not forgotten, Bob Weir. Absolutely. Keep it alive, Jack. You're awesome. I appreciate that, Keith, very much. So yeah, so that's enough of my plug in the thing. Let's talk about that shit we were just doing, the I Know Your Rider stuff, okay? Index finger, 15th fret B string. Okay, you're gonna need that to stay there, and then you go down, slide, up, down, slide, up. Okay, and that's the same, right? You need some good right hand muting. I'm palm muting these guys so that I can kind of strum aggressively and get a good feel for the... I'm not worrying about the low strings rattling. Now, if I happen to just by mistake, just kind of brush the D string or do something weird, I don't have like some weird thing happening there. It's all covered. Then there's usually one of these little... shit. It's just like he's such a genius. He just endless stream of creative interpretation, allowing Garcia to just basically go. Barely doing anything. Garcia barely touching the instrument until it's time to rock. All right, so don't be fooled as to who's doing what. This is all off the map a little bit and not guitar specific, but I sure hope that someone is at work on a comprehensive biography of, I mean, he's already had quite a lot of examination of his career, starting with The Other One and then the entire Long Strange Trip. I mean, the band has been well chronicled, but I assume there will be even more examination of what took place, post the Touch of Grey period. I think a lot of people would be interested in hearing about what the last 30 years have been, I mean, it's a long time. So, I mean, it's hard for me to believe that Jerry died at 53 and I'm 55 already. Now, granted, judging by my youthful visage, I clearly have not had as much fun as that grizzled old man, but I can't understand how Garcia looks like he's 80 when he's 52 or 53. It looks like just ashen, and I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's diabetes or heroin or cheeseburgers and cherry ice cream. I don't know what that is, but I'm not exactly a health conscious person, and so with the exception of a bald spot and maybe a little sagging under these eyes when I don't get enough slumber. Things are pretty intact over here at 55. So it's a real shame that Jerry clocked out so early, because those two guys clearly could have been making something spectacular happen. That said, what an amazing experience to have all the kind of that fallow period between Garcia's death and the reemergence of Bob creatively in a more high profile representation of the Grateful Dead's work, with Johnny Salami. I mean, John Mayer is single-handedly responsible for all of us enjoying this music a second time. So as much as everybody wants to slam that guy, which I think is stupid as hell because he's a talented musician. He is. If you don't respect him as a musician, then you effectively don't appreciate and respect the opinions of the few remaining members of the Grateful Dead. He was an incredibly smart choice, both from a business perspective and from an actual musical perspective. He did learn the job. He did not come in fully formed like John Kadalick or whatever, like kind of guy who I think is spectacular in terms of if you want it to sound like Garcia. But in terms of being able to elevate and reach the, extend the band's fan base and kind of breathe new life into the songs, you know, you were never going to get that with anybody that already was in the culture of representing Garcia's work in such a literal way, you know. So I have zero complaints about the arc of the last time. Well, actually, I can't say that. I have several complaints, but generally speaking, net positive. All right. Do I think the songs were too slow? Yes. Did I not appreciate the extra measures of dead time between verses and things like that? Yes, I did not like those arrangement choices. Did I have issue with Bob Weir singing Garcia songs when they had a significantly better singer in the band? Yes. Did I disagree with Bobby's tonal choices? Yes. And at the same time, still went and saw the band, still had a blast. All right? They were still awesome, okay? So criticism does not mean that I opted out of the experience entirely, man. It was still fucking great, all right? I'm just happy it was here. So look, if you're interested in learning the things that I understand about Bob Weir, all right, the main idea here would be to understand what I was talking about in terms of the gears of the watch, okay? You figure out where Jerry is, and then you're just not there. You can't be there, all right? If you step on your dancing partner's toes, that makes you the problem, okay? And Garcia's not, I think he was flexible as an instrumentalist when it was time to solo. I think he was very, very liquid and capable of being kind of go wherever the spirit took him. But from how he plays rhythm guitar while he sings, while he's doing those two things at once, I think he's, you know, very basic, and that's all right. He understood that was, you know, important. It's kind of like Michael Anthony inside of the mandala that's Van Halen. Like with a guy like Eddie Van Halen going crazy on the guitar, there's no room for any bass histrionics. This is not the job. So if somebody's already doing the busy work, you strip it back. And so for Bobby, the opposite was true. That guy doesn't do anything busy, so I'm going to make something entertaining happen while he's keeping it chill. You know, when you hear just that happening underneath you, you might want to hear. You know, that kind of nice 70s kind of vibe that you get that, you know. It's a lovely band. Obviously, single biggest influence on me in terms of, you know, the music that I play. Maybe after or alongside of a few others. Somebody's retracted a message here. I fully agree on the John Mayer front. Saw those guys in Boston this summer after Fare Thee Well. Love that he joined the band and the energy he brought. It's true, that was dynamite. And at the same time, I have criticisms of John Mayer. I sat down and first saw that appearance of him playing, I think it's on like Letterman or one of these late night talk shows. And, you know, it's like Bob Weir and John Mayer playing together, and John Mayer is basically, you know, doing more of a generic Texas shuffle thing and over trucking. And by the end of the time, by 2017, he's kind of figured out how Jerry kind of created the sound inside of those songs and how integral it is to kind of approach the music in what I've dubbed, you know, this kind of major pentatonic flat 3 essence. And the truth is, John was pretty vocal about his, or at least generous about sharing his study of the music, right? He was pretty prolific or pretty available on Instagram or whatever. I don't know what platform he was using. So it would be like him working on and discussing his evolution as a player. And god damn, he's a hard-working guy. He's a great singer, great songwriter, and an amazing student of music. I have 0 notes. He got a hold of the gig and did it right. He did it right. He didn't know it on day one. So that's a lot different than just being a guy who's already been in the scene, who they just plug and played, and oh, we got a Jerry impersonator. No, they got a guy who had a fire in his belly to understand that music from multiple angles. One of tribute and the other of continuance, right? There's a difference between, and I don't think Bob was interested in having somebody, clearly he wasn't. He wasn't interested in having somebody who just regurgitated that which was already done, but at the same time, John Mayer understood that there were certain signposts and signals and sounds that kind of had to be there for it to be fulfilling for other people and for it to sound like Grateful Dead music. There's a complete overhauling of the band, though, in that the low end is completely redone, and they finally got a keyboard player who understood both the aggressive side of, Brent, and also the softer, more suave and delicate, nuanced stuff that you would hear happen with Keith, and in particular the use of the grand piano. It's just fantastic. That timbre is just something that was never there in the 80s because maybe the technology or the profit wasn't there. But still, what an amazing career, what an amazing life and story. I mean, something to be said for letting your children find their own way, I suppose. I mean, granted, he could have just as easily turned into a total waste, so it's really fascinating. All right, so does anybody have any questions, or are we just kind of getting together and shooting the shit and saying like, Bobby, we miss you, we love you, all that stuff, Here, let's take a look at this thing instead of my ugly mug. I think my internet's out. But I think the good news is I have a direct pipe out. I can't tell whether or not my camera's frozen and the feed from my, there we go, it came back now. Wild. All right, so nobody's piped in. Okay. So, this is I guess my second choice of 335s, but this is probably I love this style of guitar for the Bob stuff. What is that first chord? Kind of like that, I believe. Let's get a little duller here. It's a little too bright. My guitar player plays, I think, this, like that, instead of this. There's one extra note in the other chord. This is what they refer to as quartal, okay? So there's like, built out of fours. Basically, it's acting like a suspended, sound. that's not the second chord. Well, I'm fucking lucky I don't have to play that shit in my band, to be honest. I think it's a harder job, to be honest. I think the Bob part is harder than the Garcia part. It's definitely hard for me to understand. Well, I guess I'm just dicking around now at this point. I've kind of done what I came to do. But if anybody has any questions, they can obviously always reach out to me after hours here, or they can contact me if they're interested in finding out about. There's no more private lessons. I can't. I don't want to do that anymore. I've seen the light in terms of being able to reach out to, anywhere between. Having a bunch of interest in the school was really helpful. So I want to thank everybody who's over there at the school with me, and I still want to thank those of you that have decided to stay over here and just kind of fixate on the work that I've already done. I'm sure there's other people that have picked up the slack here. It's a lovely subject to talk about. So I'm fortunate that I get to spend the whole week talking about Grateful Dead music with other interested people. And this, I guess at the end of the month, we're going to start my second round of the Garcia class, which is basically an 8-week, 2 times a week meeting for 2 hours, where people and I get together and we do an in-depth seminar with playing examples and soloing strategies of the style of guitar work on Jerry Garcia, which was often a really super fun topic to talk about, and one that I know I feel better equipped to be. I feel as though I have more of a position of understanding, at least a particular sliver of it. So. Jesus, Billy Big Balls there. Sorry about that, guys. Hey, in case anybody's wondering, that looks like a major 7th chord, but don't ever put the bass note there, okay? The bass note is still over this B flat. All right, so if you hear, I will stay one more day, like I say, honey, it's you, blah-da-blah-da-blah. It's not ba-ba-ba-ba, no, it's ba-ba-ba-ba-ba. All right, so it's a flat 7, 9, sus4, 6. Okay, pretty. Okay, a lot of online educators see that, and then you see them throw the thumb over, and it's a wrong go. Don't do that. Okay. You may not believe it, but you are 100% one of the top in the world at this genre of guitar and music. Thank you. That's super sweet. Is there a Bob version of that? Meaning what? What are we talking about here? Somebody said, my string. Oh, okay. There's some questions rolled in. I'm happy to. Okay. Quitty Pop says, string preference. I think I must have acid hands or something. Never using slinkies again. Sorry, that's what I use. I use the yellow, just regular slinkies, the 10s. On my shredder guitars, I use 9s, you know, like on my Jackson and Kramers and stuff like that with the Floyd Rose. And occasionally I'll throw 9s on my telly if I know I'm going to be doing like sicko country shit, but tend not to do that. I haven't been in the session game for a while. Been just too busy teaching and having fun with this. So most of my guitars are rocking the same strings, just Ernie Ball 10s, slinkies. I used to think I had acid hands too, and I don't know. Over the years, things have just kind of calmed down. I'm not sure what happened, but my pH levels and hand perspiration has chilled out. I did not like boomers. I found them to be kind of stiff. And elixirs, elixirs might be a good call, but I tend to like the thinner coating on those for the acoustic, but not for the electric. I never found it required. So that's my question. That's my answer to your question regarding string preference. I do have an ES-125 style guitar here that I was playing. I did a thing on Russian Lullaby not too long ago and did some kind of faux jazz shit. And that guitar is wearing 10s, but I think it needs 11s. That or it needs a little bit more downward pressure at the saddle here, but it's a pretty wonderful instrument. Another question here. This is just somebody saying, thank you. I'll see you at the bitter end, which is great. Yeah, we're playing there. We're also playing out on Long Island at Bo's a couple of nights before. So if you're out east, that might be a better show for you to try to come and see. Plus, it's free. So no parking, not as much driving. You can get fucked up and probably make it home. All right, somebody saying, you rock, Jack. I appreciate that. You may not believe it, but no, same guy says that I'm aces here. Diodario New York XLs are so good. You know what? I like the Diodario strings. I grew up using them. I have no real beef with them, but over the years I just have gravitated towards and have stuck with the slinkies. So I've been living that life. I use these Jim Dunlop blue Max Grip picks. They're a 1.5 millimeter. They're generic enough that I can find them anywhere. And then I have a handful of the black graphite Adamas picks as well. I dropped it earlier in the session, so I reached back where I keep the spares, you know, back here. But you know, it's close enough to the tortoiseshell picks that I like to play, but you know, tortoiseshell is an animal product, and it's kind of unethical and difficult to get a hold of at the same time. Beautiful. Anyway, so these work nicely. They're stiff. But they still sound bright, chirpy. Neck pickup. Maybe a little overdrive. Sounds pretty good. Oh no, that doesn't sound like it's really how would we say, optimized for this sound. Anyway, it's been fun. It's been an interesting journey to kind of play this stuff and enjoy it again and try to teach it. Ever tried Whitfield Telly? No, Whitfield Telly has never been in my lap, but I'm assuming it's aspiring to like a pre-CBS style kind of evocation of that recipe. I'm not a Telly guy, oddly enough. It's just never really been my cup of tea. I do own a couple, but I just am not really down for that form factor. I don't really do. I like that middle pickup, and if I'm going to go for the two pickup design, I tend to prefer this, actually, even for country. I kind of like it for country. Hey, Jack, just wanted to drop in, say hello and thank you, and let you know how much I appreciate your live streams and lessons. Oh, that's awful sweet of you. I appreciate you chiming in. That's actually very meaningful. You know, the funny thing is, I did this because I started doing this because my sons dared me to. They challenged me. They told, well, in particular, my youngest one, who loves to fucking kick me in the nuts and say hello to me. That's his way of saying good morning, is to challenge me. And so he challenged me to see if I could get 100 subscribers. And so that's what sort of started all this craziness back in 2017 or 18. Will this tribute lesson be available afterwards? I want some friends to hear it. Of course, yeah, it's going to be hosted. It's going to be here forever. It's under all of the office hours things are, if I'm not mistaken, I've been remiss. Since I started doing the file management for my lessons over at the Skool platform. No, this is a mid-60s. Somebody's asking what. This guitar has been in my possession for 20 some odd years or something like that. It's a 66 ES335. So the lessons have been, they should be either filed under, whether or not they're done as a live stream like this, they're going to be under the live heading, and you'll see office them listed with either mediocre or cryptical designations as to what the subject matter is. So they're kind of hit or miss in terms of, you know, when you go Easter egg hunting. The file management is significantly more legit over at Skool. Like thank you, I agree, it's a lovely instrument. The file management is significantly better labeled and chronicled and organized at the library and the Skool program. But I understand that paid lessons are not in the cards for everybody, but I will say that it's, I do think that it's pretty good. I think it's a pretty dope value. And am I on any recordings that I could share? Any original music that I'm working on? You know, it's been a long time, Scotty, since I made any original music. But I do have some albums, but they were with my my solo band. And to be honest, you know, there's some elements of it that are nice, but it was never really fully realized as far as nothing I'm super proud of. I mean, that's not true. I'm proud of it, but it just has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. I was more of like a studio rat guy who was interested in doing things along the lines of like Elliott Smith, and if you kind of combined Elliott Smith and you know, stuff like that. So it's kind of teary-eyed singer-songwriter. Oh, I always call it my "oh woe is me" period. It's a lot of you know, depressing songs and stuff like that. It's not happy music. So I tend not to really gravitate towards that energy anymore. Now that I'm happily married and a father of two, and it's pretty stoked, to be honest. You know, like life's pretty great. I don't really have anything I don't have any right to complain about anything. Just want to drop by, say thanks. Will this tribute lesson be available afterwards? Yes, so you should find it under live. Am I on any recordings? No. Early 70s 335? No, I already said that. 66, beautiful guitar, yes. Sorry, should I go with early 70s or a custom shop 335? I think it's kind of hard to say that because you have no idea that there's going to be exemplary models in both camps, right? So guitars are, you know, they're like people. In a way, you could just say, oh, the people then are better. But that's not true. Like as often as I slag off the Gen Z weasels that I dislike, and all the vocal fry and people who are, you know, afraid to shake hands, or they view it as a microaggression when you tap them on the shoulder. They're like, that's assault. You know, it's like, I'm sorry, I'm just like a more, you know, guttural kind of personality. I'm just more old school and analog. I like a lot of the younger kids that I've met that are should be totally hampered by all that technology and all those things. So as much as I'd like to cast a big general, you know, like condemnation of that generation, and I often do, there's plenty of examples. So some of the best people I've met through teaching have been some of the younger guys. Sadly, there's like no girls are interested in this stuff. Like no, not that I'm interested in meeting girls. I have I'm happily married. But it's interesting to me that there's very few females that reach out about lessons regarding this music. I don't know whether or not there's like a certain, I never really thought of this as a boys club, but I guess it kind of is. So, you know, anyway, back to your guitars rather than this extended metaphor about people. There are great guitars made today, and there are great guitars made in 1974, and there are great guitars made in 1966. I just happened to own one. I just literally came across it and was like, that's mine. And, you know, like, so, you know, you can't reduce everything to the stats. You know, like a tear sheet doesn't necessarily say what it brings out of you and how it makes you feel. And the funny thing is, some guitars, you have to move a little bit towards them to get what they have, or you might have to modify them a little bit. You know, like this guitar I had refretted. Not that big a deal. It's just what I knew it wasn't going to be a player until I had remedied its frets. But now it's been a steady friend. It was tied for first place for many, many years in my harem, so to speak. Anybody else chiming in here? So I have no real way of telling you one way or the other what to do. Beautiful guitar. Yes, I agree. I'm interested in the Skool, but the time difference seems prohibitive. So 12, 13 hours. Do I have suggestions for that? I'm not certain. So this is Judd Wilmot is speaking. So Judd, if you want to talk to me offline, feel free, or we can talk literally right now. Every single second of content that I make is recorded and logged for students to examine. There's also a bunch of exclusive to the site. I made a mistake and posted some content that's actually for the site. I hired a transcriptionist to go back through all of my favorite lessons and tab out and make the tablature for some of the better lessons I had. And so, like I said, we're learning Jack Straw this week, so I uploaded, thinking I was uploading it just to the site, but instead I made it public rather than private to the site. So some of you may have seen, which by the way, it'll be going away after I finish this. That's actually content that's for the subscribers over there. So I feel bad about like kind of wetting your whistle and being like, no, that's not for you, but that is going to happen because those people actually paid for that content, and I had to pay for that. I actually paid somebody to go and tab it all out. So the good news is there's like a hell of a lot more content than you could ever possibly digest. The only issue I would potentially see is if you are a beginner and you really want a lot of one-on-one hand-holding time with me, that's not going to happen over there the same way it would if you had like somebody who came to your house and taught you and could put their finger on, like show you, no, you got to press down hard. Like I used to have to reach across and press down on people's fingers and stuff like that. You know, like that's how much energy you need to be putting into the fret. Now, I can tell you that, like, for example, like one of the biggest lessons I ever teach anybody is, hey, where you fret within the fret is huge. If you're fretting back here, that amount of downward force applied at the front of the fret makes music as opposed to noise. All right, so if I'm pressing down, just if I move it back, the note stops. So that's how little you have to use, but if you're back here, you really have to jam it down, okay? So that sucks. And so it's easy to show somebody that when you say, lighten up your touch, okay, now let's bring it up. And then they can see that the note actually starts to exist with very little effort, right? Because a lot of people are white knuckling it. And so they consequently take all the chords and they kind of, everything's all kind of, kind of going seasick. So, it's nice to be able to be in the same room as somebody, and consequently the more time, in an ideal world where I had an infinite amount of time, yeah, but I mean, if I taught 80 hours a week, every student getting an individual hour, I mean, I just simply can't do that. This isn't the only thing I have in my life, unfortunately. So if you want to get feedback, that's constant. I'm always offering feedback to my students. even the ones that don't pay. So the truth is, I'd say on average, I get about 3 or 4 texts or emails or, people reaching out, asking me questions all the time. Sometimes it takes me a couple of days to get back to them. But that's kind of what else can you expect if you put yourself, I've put myself out there as kind of what I am, which is kind of a big brother professorial type of dude. And that's generally speaking the way I want to work. I want to help people. I love giving back to this music and the people that care about it and love it. And to be honest, those people cared about me enough to actually hire me as their private teacher for many years. And now I'm lucky enough to have a little notoriety within the field so that I can hang up a shingle and have my own little program, which is kind of nice. It's really nice, So for what it used to cost to get 10 lessons with me, you can now study for the whole year, which is kind of, I think a lot of people are like, oh, wow, okay, so 10 lessons used to go away in 2.5 months. So it's quite a value. But if you do need the kind of extra special hand-holding, I would suggest you find somebody that and I don't mean that in a negative way. Everybody goes through a period where they need like direct hands-on supervision when they're learning the instrument. In my opinion, it's very very hard to find somebody who's just evolved on their own without any outside involvement that's playing at a level that you're going to ultimately want to be at. So if you're interested in Skool, it's like $100 a month or whatever like that, which is not insignificant. So if you can't make the commitment, don't do it. I would welcome the opportunity to teach you, but on the same token, that's it. What's the website to get premium content? It's not a website. It's Skool. So if you just Google Snax Skool, SNAXSKOOL. You'll find it, or if you use AI, you'll find it. It's pretty well documented there, but I don't really advertise it. I sent it out to my current students. Most of them just signed up, and that was it. Every now and again, I'll put out like a little flyer or something like that, like if you want to take your game to the next level or whatever like that. So yeah, if you want to reach out to me, you can always contact me at jackdevine, JACKDEVINE 1970 at Gmail. That's how people contact me if they want to do that. You just fixed my bar chord problem. I didn't know you had a bar chord problem. So that's cool. I don't know how you do it, but whatever. And somebody saying, thanks, you'll follow up. So bar chords I remember like hating this B chord with the white hot passion of 1,000 suns. I could not stand playing that. So, like... All right, lovely to have the bar chords coming into focus for you, though. That's a great skill to have, all right? And don't sleep on this, though, okay? If there's just one little bit of wisdom I could give you, if you think you got it under control, if you're playing this kind of bar chord here, or kind of a C shape, but we kind of bring things up like that, don't throw your whole finger over. Don't commit that much muscle power to these A and D strings. Start your bar on the G string, right? There's only one reason to do that, and that's if you intend on going like, so that's kind of maybe better on the... kind of that Europe 72 or Skull and Roses kind of. Back when the Dead had 2 humbucking guitars in it. Pretty awesome. Pretty awesome. What do we got here? Boom. That would be this. It's going to be that. And then I think I can get to the sound I want right there. Where is... Yeah, that'll do it. One of the tricks is getting these 2 pickups to balance out. So you get the creaminess of the neck pickup, and then you add in the brightness. So you can hear how it's kind of a muted sound. That's because the treble pickup's tone is all the way on 0. Okay, and as you hammer on, you want to bring it up until you start to hear the metallic nature of the fret. There it is. Maybe a little bit more. Okay, and then you can brighten it up a little bit, maybe off the next sound. Right, that's kind of a... Get a little bit more oomph out of it like that. You know, rolling off high end isn't the end of the world on a guitar. this instrument. It's just very, very full, very woody. It does have that, you know, that nice sound of that. Love that sound. Little woody, a little over broken up. Folks, I'm going to sign off here, go upstairs, make a little lunch with my wife. She's apparently hungry. All right. What up, homie? Hey, it's Justin. I love you, Justin. Man, I wanted to talk to you a little while ago. I see you here. What size frets do I like and why? Kind of like a chick's ass. The bigger the better. I do like the bigger frets. This guitar does not have big frets. This guitar has very appropriate size frets. Whatever the original size was, one size larger in both directions is what I asked for here. And to be honest, I didn't even size it like that. I already owned a 335, the Sunburst one you've seen me with over the years. And that guitar came to me refretted beautifully. So I went back to the guy that did the work. I found out who that was and brought him this guitar and my old guitar and said, do you remember this guitar? He's like, totally. So then he remembered the work, looked up the exact same fret wire, installed the same stuff. Worked out lovely. This became my backup guitar, and then very quickly it turned into my primary instrument actually for many years. I mean, a lot of gigs. This would be what you would see me playing. It's a sexy beast. It's cool. It's got the, you know, the trapeze removed. Somebody installed, like, that's not the way this came, right? Somebody decided to turn it into like a 63 or 62, like a Clapton style, you know, small block cherry red thing. But the pickups are the patent number pickups. So they sound really nice. I will say that, you know, the absence of a middle pickup is kind of a bummer, but I'm not going to put one on a guitar that, you know, is relatively intact and, you know, just has enough character on its own. This is such a lovely guitar. But generally speaking, I like jumbo frets, so like 6100s, or I think the size, if they're done, that's if it's a Dunlop fret wire is 6100. If it's a Jescar fret job, usually I think that's what is 57, 110, something like that. So, you know, lovely, lovely. I don't like to fight the guitar when I bend. Anyway, I love the sound of a good, mildly, well, this is pretty well overdriven actually, but I do like that sound quite a bit. But generally speaking, the bigger the better, the fret, but I've never had a guitar with super jumbos, but I will tell you this, I don't like stainless steel frets. I've paid the upcharge for stainless steel frets on several necks and have been displeased with the sound of them. They feel nice, they polish up and they last forever. They do their job impeccably. That said, they don't sound good. They don't sound well, let's put it this way. They don't sound the same, so they don't work with what I'm doing at all. All right, so. Fun, man. Whew. This thing's been in the case for a long time. I bought this crazy ass strap for it. Actually, originally I thought I would buy a wide strap for the kind of super heavy Ibanez guitar that I bought, and then this didn't really do what I was hoping it would do. And so I ended up thinking, well, that kind of looks nice for, you know, for this vibe, for this guitar. And the other one has that nice guitar that matches some of the burnt sienna tones inside the tobacco burst. So the 335 strap. You're got some first world problems when you're talking about matching your leather strap to the patina of your faded 60s 335. Anyway. I know that everybody kind of fixates on the clarity and the sweet chime of the clean sounds in the guitar stuff, but have I covered Dark Star? I don't play Dark Star in my band. I think of it as being a little tough to do with a band that rehearses as infrequently as my band. We get together and we play songs that we know. But the elements that have to be there for Dark Star to happen, I think are best developed on the bandstand. So if, let's say that I was lucky enough to be able to be hired and play 30 nights in a row, or, maybe a string of 10 to 15 gigs over the course of a couple of months. And after doing so, you're going to get a level of communication established with the people on the bandstand with you that you don't have necessarily on night one. I mean, you can wing it and hope that, and the truth is, if I was to play Dark Star in my band, everybody would be impressed. Everybody would like it, except me. I think of Dark Star as being this very special thing, and I don't think I deserve to kind of do it yet. At least not in this setting, not in the band that I have. And I love the guys in my band. It's just we don't spend any time doing that kind of stuff, right? my favorite guitar chord choice in the whole Grateful Dead catalog. So you got that. All the years combined. A sus. And then A. E minor. A broken angel sings. Man. From the guitar. Lovely stuff. Best songs. I mean, there's such great tunes. So wonderful. This is great songs. Yeah, I used to play Dark Star in the band, and you know, I like I said, we used to play a lot. We used to rehearse every week. The band I'm in right now, unfortunately, has by my mistake, by covering, I mean, have I made a video discussing the techniques? Absolutely, yes. If you take I'm actually playing this guitar, and you'll hear me doing my best, like, was it? I even ended up doing, I think I used a little spring reverb to get that little early 60s sound, and then did the whole, all that stuff, and you'll see it. It's out there for sure. Jacksnax guitar, Jacksnax Dark Star. It'll come up for sure. I'm the man. R.I.P. Bobby. Yes, absolutely. James, you're on the money. You are absolutely... I appreciate being called the man, but the truth is we're here for Don Roberto. Don Roberto es el señor, for sure. He was, I mean, in the unenviable position of being the second fiddle to arguably one of the most charismatic and influential guitar players of all time. It was a tough road to hoe, for sure. But what an amazing seat. Man, that must have been something else, being able to be around those guys as a young man and having them be your big brothers. Fucking amazing, you know. I never had any kind of tutelage, any kind of mentoring like that, and not until I was deep into my 30s or 40s. And so some of those people are still very near and dear to me. Unfortunately, they're getting older, you know, and they're very capable folks. In fact, I'm going up to see, I'll be up at the J-Rad show on Sunday. I should be backstage and having some fun with my friend who's pals with all those guys, which is, well, not all those guys, two of those guys, I think Metzger in particular. Um, so anyway, look, obviously we're here kind of celebrating and sort of reminiscing and mourning. I think it's hard to think of somebody that had a better life than Bob Weir, to be perfectly honest. And at the same time, it's really sad. So what more can I say that other than to that which I have already said, which is he was a huge influence on me, and he filled my ears and my brain with, you know, the material that I use all the time for creating sounds that I love and adore, and the music that has touched me deeper than any music before or since. Nothing has hit me the same way, and I'm not suggesting that that's a universal appeal, but he got me and I got him, and I never met the man, and he is going, his presence, you know, is eternal, because the part of him that influenced me is still there, exactly as it was. I never met him. I never got to tell him how important he is, but I think he's, you know, out there somewhere in whatever form you take when you stop being this sack of bones. And I hope he can hear. If you can, keep making music, and hopefully you'll hear the millions of voices down here saying how much we miss you and loved you and cared about you and the things that were fascinating to you. And we couldn't wait to hear what you had to say next on the instrument for many, many decades. This is a very powerful person. It's incredible. And so hard to be upset that somebody had such a great time while they were here. It's not like he did it. He never hurt anybody that I can think of particularly. And he lived well. He was a very happy person, you know. And he seemed to make peace with most of the things that might have been concerning, you know. Or it's not like he lived his life like some sort of lechy old Lothario. He ended up married and happy with kids. He ended up healthy, you know, yoga and eating right all these years. He ended up getting a second bite at the apple with a great reincarnation of his old band, and get to play all those great songs and tour the world and see the world and enjoy the world enjoying him in his elderly state, and got one more go around. I mean, his like third act or fourth act is more exciting than most people's entire fucking life. So when you think about that and the fact that this guy went and dropped acid and then hopped on the Kesey bus at 15 or 16 after seeing a Beatles concert, well, it was pretty fucking fun. That sounds really, really great. Right place, right time, and the willingness to let go and just see where the sea of life would take him. And obviously the talent and the trust of his bandmates saw him through to the other side of all of this stuff. And he's just an amazing guy who will be lucky if we ever see somebody like that again. So take it easy, Ace. All right, I hope you're up there and can hear me tell you I love you and I miss you and I thank you more than anything. More than the missing is the gratitude I feel for the music you've left behind. So thank you very much for all that, and thank each and every one of you for tuning in. And if you're watching this after hours, you know, I don't know. I don't announce these things. I just kind of come on and spit when I need to. All right. But I love you all, and I care about you all, and I care about your guitar playing, because I hate fucking crappy guitar playing. Sorry. All right. I'll catch you guys soon, I hope. All right. Take care, everybody. This is Over and Out from Brooklyn. Cheers.